Good morning. Quickly, before I start, hands up, who does mindfulness in their organisation? So a few of you do. Hands up if you intend to do mindfulness. Is that? Okay, so quite a few of you, yeah. So I have a confession to make, which is that I am not part of wellbeing within General Electric. I'm actually part of learning and development. And my role is to promote mindfulness, mindful leadership, have people understand the workings of their brain from a peak performance perspective. Okay, so it's not necessarily from well-being, although we know that the outcome of all of these things that I'm going to talk about is actually well-being. So what I thought I might do for you today is just give you 3 of my top learnings that I've encountered in the last 18 months, 2 years, albeit in GE, we're still absolutely scratching the surface. There's so much we could do in this area. So just a few key learnings, and I'll give you a few so what's, and then I'll finish up with where we might go next. I'll try and leave as much time for questions as possible because I think that's where we get the juicy stuff. Just to give you a little bit of context, in case you don't know who GE, General Electric is, massive American organisation, one of the oldest organisations on the New York Stock Exchange, huge revenues, $123 billion. We call ourselves a 125-year-old startup because although we've been around for ages, we're now a tech company. And so we're going through this massive transformation to develop us from an industrial organisation to a digital industrial organisation. We're in 180 countries and at least 300,000 employees. So the challenge of rolling out mindfulness in 180 countries is quite enormous. How do you do that when the gold standard is to take small groups into a room for 6 to 8 weeks and give them a program? How do you do that? So that's what I'm going to talk about, how we've actually done it here. So my top 3 learnings from the last 18 months are, and this is a key one, and this was discovered really by accident. So within GE, we teach about the brain and we teach mindfulness as well. And when I actually started teaching employees about their brain, what stops it, what starts it, how you can perform better at work, really understanding what's going on underneath the hood so that you can really be much more self-aware about your behaviours and your actions. And then I rolled into mindfulness. And what was quite interesting is the amount of people interested in mindfulness was minimal. It was just people who were already interested in mindfulness. But teaching people about their brain has a particular impact on them. So probably just like you, we have employees who are highly intelligent, highly analytical, and highly skeptical too. And they're not really interested in this fluffy HR mindfulness stuff because frankly they're just too busy. They've got too many responsibilities. And it's just hippie, voodoo, witchcraft stuff, So what I found was that teaching them about their brain in a series of live webinars was enough to give them that self-awareness of, you're telling me that these amygdala things in my head are running the show. They are controlling my behaviour, my emotions, and I possibly don't have the top-down control over my brain and my responses and my actions that I actually thought I had. Well, what am I supposed to do about this, they say. It's really funny, they sometimes get quite annoyed about it. What am I supposed to do about it? And so the answer is, well, have you considered mindfulness? No, what's that, they say. And so this is a way we can say, well, can we introduce you to it? Can we give you a webinar on it? Can we introduce you to some free apps? Can we perhaps give you some premium apps so you can start to integrate this into your daily life and see what impact it has on you? Now, because the majority of our employees are engineers, by their very analytical nature, teaching them about their brain makes them go, oh, now I understand. I just didn't know this stuff before. And a lot of what I hear them say is, I always thought it was me. Now you're telling me it's it's just my brain. So I think it's a really nice way to approach mindfulness, is not so much from the fluffy side of this is going to help you in terms of well-being. What we're saying here is this is going to help you in terms of peak performance. You know, this is going to increase your focus, your attention, your emotional regulation, your self-awareness, and probably your sleep as well. And so this is a way that it's really sort of come together. And now we've got people who are interested in mindfulness. So that's my first lesson, is focus on the brain first. Within the area of mindfulness, I think 2 years ago, it was very radical to talk about digital mindfulness. It was all about, you know, bringing in a trainer, running these small group sessions, 10 to 20 people over a course of 8 weeks. That's how you deliver mindfulness. I think that's starting to change now. Certainly we don't do anything in person. But what we do is 100% digital now. So we do live webinars, we give them apps, we promote a whole load of other resources as well. Even if it's an app we don't actively support, we'll say, here's a list of things that you can go to right now. You choose, you've got the autonomy, you decide which one is suitable for you. And I think this really works with a modern workforce who just doesn't have time. So most of the solutions we've got, in fact all of them, you can access on your phone. You don't need to be sitting in a classroom. So I think there's some key learnings there, and I do attend mindfulness conferences, and that's what I was hearing this year. A lot of companies now saying, actually, we've gone digital with this. That's not to say we shouldn't have in-person classes where it works for us, but we don't necessarily have to go down that route. So we do webinars and digital apps, and I'll tell you where we're moving forward in that space as well. The last thing I would say, my last sort of key piece of learning here, again, this is just through kind of accident really. This was rolled out within learning and development, so it wasn't an HR initiative. It didn't really get an awful lot of promotion. It was really just, here's within our learning portfolio, here's some stuff about you and your brain and your mind and how you can work better. And what I discovered was it started to grow and develop, all right? So it's been a kind of a bottom-up, organically growing, grassroots approach, and it is kind of spreading through word of mouth, which is perfect. It's almost kind of going viral, slowly, but it's still spreading. And so I just think there's something about the power of your employees telling their other employees, actually, this is really good, you need to do this. You need to go on this webinar, I'm going to send you the link now. Versus HR saying, this is what we need you to do because it's going to do you good. So there's something about the way we approach it, the way we market it, that I think will have an impact on its outcomes. So it might well be that you want to just get a group of people who are really inspired, and there will always be a group of people in your organisation who just love mindfulness and they're so passionate about it. Can you just get them to roll it out? Just give them some kind of authority and just see what happens as a result of that. So it's quite an interesting one. You don't have to necessarily spend huge amounts of money. In fact, my budget is zero. So there you go. You can still do some great stuff with some very willing people and not much in the way of budget. All right, so those are my 3 key learnings. So what? Now, I don't actually have any metrics to show you. Instead, what I've got is just a few kind of anecdotal quotes, but I think they give us quite a clear indication. So this is what you would normally see. So if you're rolling out some kind of mindfulness program, this is what you normally see. You see employees saying, yeah, it's just fantastic, it really helps me, I'm using it proactively. So that's what we'd expect to see. The second quote here, just take a look at this. So you might think that person has done mindfulness training. In fact, they haven't at all. They've done brain awareness training. And that's just quite interesting. So they may not have ever shut their eyes and meditated in their life. All they've done is start to learn about how their brain works, and they're starting to apply it. So same outcome as mindfulness, except it's a completely different way of coming at it. It's just learning about themselves, essentially. And of course, any kind of mindfulness program would include some kind of information about behaviours and emotions. So it's just a really interesting, that second one. They don't have to sit cross-legged on a cushion and om to get the same kind of benefits and the same outcome. And then this last one is, I've added this one in because I think it's quite an interesting one, because what you're seeing here is somebody saying, yes, I do mindfulness, I've done it for a while, But I want the organisation to now start to embrace this, because I think it's part of our future where we go. So it's not so much that it's mindfulness just for them as an employee, it's also mindfulness as a way of being in the workplace. And if you think, would you rather give your business to a company who is mindful or mindless as a customer? So I think we'll start to see more and more companies now saying, actually, we're working on this, it's a work in progress, but we are really trying to be more mindful about the things that we do in our organisation. So it's interesting, when people start to get excited about this, they want it to be their way of being in the organisation. And of course, if this is early days, it can cause a degree of frustration, but we kind of have to start somewhere. The final sort of part of my session is really just to say, well, where are we going next with this? Bearing in mind that this is with my learning and development umbrella above me, all right? So Wellbeing will also be promoting, GE Wellbeing will also be promoting mindfulness, but this is kind of, peak performance. What are we doing? So I'll just give you a few examples. We're going to try and make this content digital, on demand, accessible 24/7, so you can just grab it, short, bite-sized, 5-minute videos, and then we'll try and do some facilitated sessions afterwards. Again, teaching people about their brain. And we currently have 4 sessions about the brain, 1 session about mindfulness, but we could just increase that. We could have a whole load. We may well do some on-site mindfulness sessions, and I think it's absolutely called for. People need reflection spaces, meditation spaces. They just need breathing spaces. They just need a place to go to. They can just shut their eyes. Wednesday lunchtime, I get to shut my eyes and just do nothing for 20 minutes, listen to someone, it's lovely. Reset, press that recharge button. How do you do that when you've got thousands of sites across the world? Well, we've got to make a low-touch session that's almost kind of mindfulness light that can be facilitated consistently by people who are not mindfulness trainers. So that's our challenge, and we'll have to bring in some technology to help us to do that. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. I'm not seeing many organisations do that one yet. Yes, of course, we'll do some standard 6 to 8 week classes, but they'll be digital, so we'll have hundreds of people attending them from all over the world. We'll do some more apps. We'll launch more apps. We do use some of the primary premium apps. I'll tell you who we use. So we use Headspace. We use Will, and you spell that W-H-I-L. And we also use Be Mindful as well. So those are the 3 key ones that we pay for our employees. And then we give them a whole load of free ones. One I particularly like, if you're interested, is Stop, Breathe and Think. It's a free one. It's lovely. It doesn't do an awful lot, but it's fantastic. It's a really nice way to introduce it to employees. We will be implementing all of this mindfulness stuff into our existing GE leadership learning content. So if you go to any leadership class for GE anywhere in the world, you should hear a consistent message about operating your brain, being mindful. How can you be a mindful leader, an authentic leader? So we've got to start sort of implementing that, incorporating it into what we do globally. And then how do we help you as a trainer if you turn up and you facilitate at one of our classes? How do we help you upskill you so that you can have people, just check in with themselves once every few hours just to keep their energy going? So it's all about sustainable energy management. Building that community, that's where this is going to come from. Podcasts, videos, interviews, it's about getting people talking about it, getting them excited about it. We need to continue to do that. And then the last thing I'll say is that we really need to do some extra work on removing the stigma, because we still do have a stigma about talking about mental health. But it's quite interesting that mindfulness allows you to kind of sidestep that in quite a safe way if you're an organisation that doesn't necessarily have that existing way of being very open about talking about mental well-being. So mindfulness gives you a safe way. It's much more sort of solutions focused. So that's a challenge we've got, and we've obviously got budget restrictions there. If you are interested in rolling out something within your own organisation, this is the document to take a look at. This is the Mindfulness Initiative. It was part of the government all-party parliamentary group that looked into mindfulness. You might have heard about the Mindful Nation report that came out in 2015. So just go to the mindfulnessinitiative.org.uk. You can download this document. It's been put together by loads of different people, and it's saying, what do you need to think about if you're going to roll out mindfulness? Or if you just want to consider it, how do you do it? What are the different options? Loads of case studies there. So that's really, really helpful. I do have to dash off after this session because I've got to go and deliver a webinar for HR on resilience. But you've got my details here. I'm very happy if any of you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or drop me an email. You just want to have a chat. I'm very happy to do that. You've got my details there. And I think if there are any questions, what questions are there? Are there any questions?
Yes, we've got lots of questions coming through on Slido. Yes, you look desperate. Okay. What was your question?
My question was, I was really interested to hear about your reflection sessions with local champions, which is something that we're working towards. And we have a bit of conflict because we're based in Oxford and we have lots of mindfulness centres, so we have a lot of conflict about how we deliver mindfulness. So I'm quite interested to hear about how you've done this with local champions without diluting the mindfulness message or key messages.
So people who didn't hear the question at the back, it's a question about local champions and how you worked with mindfulness without diluting the message.
Yeah, so I would say that that's one that we're still working at. So we haven't actually rolled that one out yet, because if we're going to roll it out, we've got to roll it out globally to thousands of locations. We probably will use a digital solution. So I know some of the premium app suppliers are moving in that direction. So the idea is we probably will give them a digital product to use, and they basically kind of play an app, play an audio track for 10, 20 minutes, and then just do a facilitated discussion afterwards. How was that for you? What did it bring up for you? How could you apply that? So they don't need mindfulness training. We're not going down that route. It's almost just like a facilitated discussion. It's not even mindfulness. It's more kind of just like a breathing space.
Lots of questions coming up on Slido asking you about, do you host your mindfulness webinars? What are the best apps out there? I know you said it, but it might be worth just saying it again, because I think everybody was scribbling at that point.
Absolutely. So mindfulness webinars, I mean, I personally deliver them myself just using WebEx. I do it in a very brain-friendly way. We use whiteboards, we use the chat box. I do guided meditations live. It's very straightforward to do if you're familiar with that kind of technology. It doesn't require anything other than your normal piece of meeting software. And I'll say the apps again that we use, these are the ones that are GE covered for employees. We use Headspace, we use Will, W-H-I-L, and we also use Be Mindful. Be Mindful is slightly different. It's a sort of an 8-week program. So it's slightly different. You do it and then probably you'd move on to Will or Headspace. So those are the ones I recommend.
How do you...
I'd probably leave define mindfulness, because I think we could be here for a day on that one.
So for those of you looking at the questions, is how do you define mindfulness?
Yeah, and interesting enough, what I would say is we don't actually have any metrics on this at the moment. The reason why is GE spends $1 billion a year on leadership learning, and we tend not to spend much effort or money proving it. We kind of know it works, but we don't need the proof. And so actually I don't have any proof of whether mindfulness works. All I do have is a lot of quite excited employees who are spreading the message, telling their colleagues, and wanting to come back and repurchase Headspace years on. I will just say one thing that I have noticed, I haven't talked about it, I'll talk about it very quickly now, is that when employees come to you and say, I would like an app, please, and we've made it a little bit challenging for them, they have to give us a cost centre and all that kind of stuff, they then use the app. Where a manager says, I'm going to give this out to my team, I've got 20 of you, you're all going to have Headspace for Christmas or whatever, what I notice is at least half of those employees in that group don't even redeem the app. They don't even pick it up, they don't use it. So I think there's some learning there to say, I think you have to have people coming to you in order to ask for it rather than freely giving it out, because there's something different about that sense of autonomy and also the value that they're placing on something that's just dumped in their lap. And of course it depends on the way that the manager does it.
I'm just checking at the back if we've got time for one more
time
question. Time up, I'm afraid. Wow, that 20 minutes went so quickly. Huge thank you for Debbie for sharing what they're doing at GE, and I recommend listening to the webinars that she's done with them. They're free and online, so well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.